And welcome to the WCEG Network on the WCEG Talk Radio. This is the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak live into the community. I am Dr. Babs, your show host for this evening's segment of the Holistic Perspective Show. Welcome back to another season of the Holistic Perspective Show. It's great to be back. I hope all is well with you and yours. I'm excited today about our topic because I have a guest co-host, an amazing doctor that he's going to speak to us about exercise being strong medicine. And it's a great way to kick off the session. We're in for an exceptional educational experience. We're going to talk about the meaning of exercise, why it's strong medicine, and how to stay consistent and motivated. So we hope that you will stay engaged. You will throw in some questions so that we can make it interactive. And please tag friends and families because it's all about impacting you, impacting our community. All right, we are live on multiple channels, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. So please go ahead and tag your friends and neighbors and generally in the WCEG networks. But before we get started, two quick important announcements. The information that we share here on the talk show is not intended as medical advice. It's just to help you with your wellness journey, to support you overall. And the views and opinions that are expressed by host and co-host do not necessarily reflect the views of or the opinions of the WCEG network. So as you all know, I love to, if you've been following the show for a while, I always like to start with a quote pertaining to the topic that we're going to be discussing. So this one is, exercise not only changes your body, it changes your mind, your attitude, and your mood. And especially in this season that we've been in for a while, we definitely need to learn how we can use exercise to our advantage. So welcome again, in case you're just joining in. I'm Dr. Babs, your host for this holistic perspective. I have the privilege to have a co-host with me today, Dr. Jammie Hopkins. He'll be joining me to have this powerful conversation. So let me introduce him and invite him to have this conversation with me. So Dr. Jammie Hopkins, he is a health equity scientist. He's an educator and a wellness professional. Dr. Hopkins is committed to operating at the intersection of research, practice, policy to promote healthy lifestyle and eliminate health disparities among vulnerable population. He is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Community Health and Preventative Medicine, and he is the director of the Healthier Campus Initiative at Morehouse School of Medicine. So we are colleagues, and I'm so excited to have him with me today. So Dr. Hopkins, thank you for joining me and helping me host this show today for our kickoff. So please introduce yourself a little further. Tell us more about why exercise is medicine. Why is that? Why are you passionate about it?
Okay, well, first off, I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Babs, for the opportunity to share and to communicate with you and to reach out to the masses, to spread this message about health being our wealth and how physical activity is a part of our wealth. Like you said, I've been at Morehouse School of Medicine for about 10 years now. Actually, it's been just about 10 years. And I came here trained as an exercise physiologist. And then I went into doctoral studies in public health because I wanted to understand how I could engage with populations and communities, which is a different approach than when you're working one-on-one with individuals or with patients in a clinical setting. My goal really is to think about different ways and strategies that we can create what I like to call this ecosystem of wellness that is across multiple sectors. Because oftentimes what we see, and especially in some of our wellness work, we're kind of we're kind of segregated into these different sectors, right? So clinical folks don't really talk as much with folks that are outside of clinical settings and in community settings. So we have to definitely create these bridges and create bridges that are conducive and supportive of healthy lifestyle, and physical activity being one of those healthy lifestyles. So much of the work that I do works across a number of different sectors to prioritize physical activity and active living, and to make that, I call it re-engineering physical activity into our day-to-day functionings. What we see is that, as a society, we become less physically active, as a consequence of, advances in technology. There's less of a need or less of an obligation to move, which has, deleterious effects to our health. So it's going to require, advocates, it's going to require activists, as I like to call us, activists, to rewrite that paradigm and to reintegrate and reintroduce physical activity as something that should not be avoided, something that should be embraced, and something that can really, it's really a tool in our arsenal to advance our health and our quality of life. So that's really what I'm passionate about, is working across sectors to carry that message and to really figure out and think about strategies to make it work and make it sustainable for a number of different people.
Yeah, and that you hit on so many key points. There's a separation between the clinical aspects as well as the other aspects, and we somehow in our head we've always heard that exercise is important, but because of the advancement in technology and just living busy lives and being multi-passionate and all these things and activities, we tend to put that on the side thinking that we'll catch up at some point. So how are you able to help populations understand that it needs to be intentional? Because if you don't make time, I think when you presented at one of the Walk with a Doc, he said something that if you don't look for time to exercise, you create the time. So how do you spread that message within your community, and how do they do it in the midst of the business? Because when I have patients, they tell me, my work, that's it. I've worked all day, that is my exercise. So how do you help them? Because you said paradigm shift. How do you change that conversation? Because people are hearing now and say, well, no, I'm busy. There's no way I can exercise. Can you share with us some of the things that you've been able to, the barriers that you've been able to cross through that would help them prioritize just movement altogether?
Right. So the first thing that comes to me is, I won't call it education, I'll call it awareness. Because I think, we get very comfortable with, touting the benefits of physical activity and kind of educating people and professing that knowledge. I think that's pretty ubiquitous. People know that exercise just by nature is something that's good for you. But in terms of the awareness that I provide is how individuals that have adopted a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activity, how they've been able to reduce their likelihood, reduce their risk, and in certain cases prevent certain chronic diseases that tend to crop up with individuals. So when you talk about health and you talk about longevity, those are issues and those are concerns from a lot of people. Things like cardiovascular disease, certain cancers. There's more and more research that's looking at the link between physical activity and some of the neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So these, as we age, these become growing issues. And what I kind of say as part of the awareness is that now is the time to set yourself up for success, because when you start advancing in ages, the cumulative effects of physical inactivity will catch up to you whether you like it or not.
That's right.
So that's part of the awareness, is that it's really a ticking clock, right? And those that have adopted those healthy lifestyles and sustain those healthy lifestyles early, they're reaping the benefits in advancing age, right? So that's one part of the awareness. The other part of the narrative that we have to really bust through is, we all that fatalistic narrative of, we have to die from something. Right. I might as well enjoy my life, eat what I want, be as lazy as I want to be, or be as physically inactive as I want to be, or not prioritize physical activity because I have other more important things to do. So by busting that narrative and kind of giving voice to individuals that are dealing with chronic disease, and if, really giving them a platform and saying, if they had a choice, would they have made changes prior to? 9 times out of 10, when you pose that question to individuals that are dealing with chronic disease, they would 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, if I had a second chance, I would have adopted some of those healthier behaviors. So we have to confront that narrative, that fatalistic narrative of, you got to die sometimes, and I have more important things to do, right? So that's part of the awareness. And then the other part about it is that you can get people as aware as possible. You can throw whatever information you want at them. How do you navigate through all these different aspects of life to prioritize physical activity, right? And so that's when we create teachable moments. And so that's part of what I really love doing, is creating spaces and places for physical activity where oftentimes physical activity hasn't existed. Let's say, for example, at a church service. you know? Typically, you know, those of us that are in faith communities, sometimes our services can be 2-3 hours. Why not have a 5-minute activity break that we can do during church
That's
service?
amazing.
Right?
I've never heard about that.
Oh,
Wow.
absolutely. You know, we call it's a strategy that we call instant recess, where we integrate these little pockets of physical activity, and we do it in such a way where folks, you don't have to be wearing a specific type of clothing. You can do it pretty much anytime and with anybody. So by creating these teachable moments, that places focus on physical activity, and it shows individuals that I can really fit this in whenever I, you know, in many different environments, right? And oftentimes what that also does is that it creates efficacy. So if someone can actually be physically active for 5 minutes, they say, oh, wow, I can do 10. I did 5 when I was with my church group, right? So that's another way that we try to, you know, create this paradigm shift, is whenever, in whatever settings that we do have influence, right? In work sites, in faith communities, in community settings, in the school settings, right? Where you have captive audiences of individuals, why not have some physical activity on the agenda and have that serve as a spark for increased action?
Yes, you definitely, you know what you're talking about, because these are great ideas, thinking outside the box, because no longer can we say, I'm too busy, it's not possible, I'm, you know, an entrepreneur, I'm a physician, I'm a teacher, I'm busy, I'm a mother, you know, the list goes on, and believe me, I've said some of those too. As much as I love,
as a guy,
believe me, as much as I love to exercise, I really do love it, but there are periods when I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna have to pass today. And unfortunately, if you pass over and over a period of time, then you just, you know, you get off the wagon, and it's difficult to get back on. So I love what you said about teachable moments, creating the awareness, creating the teachable moments. So whatever it is that we're doing. So as you're hearing us, just understand that whatever it is you're doing, just stay active, be active. And, you know, you said something about in church, and that's a brilliant idea. I'll definitely steal that from you if you don't mind. But, you know, there was a research that came out that sitting is the new smoking. You must have seen that. And I'm like, in church, how many hours do we sit for? For hours. So how about getting up and, you know, doing a stretch? I don't know. It'll be a difficult, I mean, some, you know, human beings generally, it takes some time to get used to new things. But then if we know that it's for our health benefit to reduce cardiovascular risk, and especially within our communities with the chronic diseases, it definitely will spark that desire to keep pushing on. And if you do 5 minutes, then you can do 10 minutes, especially if you see the benefits, it boosts your mood, like the quote that I said about what exercise can do for us overall. And I heard about workplaces where some lifestyle medicine clinic where they actually bring their mat to work, and they bring some dumbbells. There's actually an emergency room doctor that on her breaks, she does some lift, you know, and I'm going to have you speak to us about the different types of exercises, but she does during her break, she does, even if it's just 5-10 minutes, she does some weights just to help with strength training. So I'm actually thinking that I might do that. It might look really weird initially for the first few weeks, but definitely thinking about taking a mat and at lunch break, just take, you know, if I have to do a few squats, just to fit them in on days that I'm busy, that I cannot really say, okay, I can dedicate 30 minutes to working out, if I can just find a way in. So can you share with us the different types of exercise in case people are wondering, okay, so yes, I'm convinced, Dr. Hopkins, I'm going to try and make some adjustment to my schedule. How often would you say they should exercise, and what type of physical activity would you suggest that they do?
Certainly. So to answer that first part of the question in terms of what are the kind of the recommendations? So we actually now have recommendations called the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, right? So these get revised actually every 10 years based on all the different research that's being conducted on the benefits of physical activity, randomized controlled trials, and a lot of other different research. And where we stand right now, there are 3 primary recommendations for physical activity. The first one is moderate to vigorous aerobic activity. So aerobic activity is activity, the term aerobic means with oxygen. So oxygen is our primary energy source to get through these activities. So these are types of activities that require you to increase your ventilation or increase your breathing to carry out the exercise, right? So brisk walking, cycling, jogging, more intensive type recreational activities to kind of really get that heart rate up and get that breathing rate going. Those are aerobic activities that you sustain over time. So the goal is to acquire 150 minutes of these types of activities every week. So that roughly breaks down into about 30 minutes of activity most days out of the week. So let's say 5 days out of the week. That'll get you to that recommendation. The second recommendation has to do with muscle strengthening activities. So we found that utilizing muscular strength and muscular endurance activities are also important and conducive to health. So the recommendation is getting at least 2 days a week of muscle strengthening exercises. This can be body weight exercises. This can be with resistance bands. This can be with all kinds of different things in the market that are available. This can be with resistance training or strength training with barbells, dumbbells, and the like. So anytime that you are moving different weights in different planes, that's considered muscle strengthening exercise, muscle strengthening activities. The last recommendation really speaks to what you were saying earlier about prolonged sitting being related to smoking. The third recommendation specifically targets arresting sedentary activity. So how I like to describe this is anytime that you're sitting longer than 1 hour, you really want to start thinking about getting up and doing something, even if it's getting up for a quick stretch break. Because what happens is when you've been sitting for that period of time, your body actually shuts down. It kind of goes into hibernation mode. The electrical activity in your lower limbs begins to dissipate, your metabolism slows down. And so to arrest that process, getting up and just sometimes even just being active, getting up and fidgeting around the room, walking somewhere, getting a glass of water, maybe.
That's right.
That's the other recommendation is, of course, acquiring the physical activity by activities of daily living, but also by leisure time activity and going to the gym, getting out, doing the hiking. So all of those types of activity are valid, but along with being active, it's trying to arrest physical inactivity or sedentary behavior as well. Those are the recommendations. So when it comes to the different types of exercise, the different modes or modalities of exercise, I spoke to muscular strength and muscular endurance. We talked about aerobic activity. We also want to be mindful of mobility and flexibility. So things like yoga, things like passive and dynamic stretching as being important, especially as we age, because as we age, the joints tend to get a little bit stiffer. We just kind of overall get a little bit stiffer and mobility becomes a little bit, you become less supple, if you will. So by incorporating these types of activities, it keeps the joints supple, it keeps them nice and flexible, it reduces the risk of falls, which is a major health hazard, a major source of morbidity for people over the age of 65. And then we have what's called body composition. And that's really making sure that you have a good ratio of a lean body mass, muscular mass, and fat mass. So fat actually is very important for our physiological functioning, right? But you want to have the right balance of the different types of mass, which will also help to moderate your metabolism. You want to be an energy burning machine, right? And you can do that through diet and through physical activity. So those are some of the different modes and modalities of physical activity.
Yeah, you dropped a lot of nuggets, and I'm going to just touch on a few. And of course, again, don't forget, if you're tuning in, please send us your questions. This whole idea, we're here to empower and encourage and enlighten you. We want to be healthier together as a community. So please send in your questions. I wanted to speak on several things here that you referred to. I like that you talked about the guidelines, just minimum, if you have to do 30 minutes, 5 days a week. I do have some patients that tell me, well, what if I can't do 30 minutes? Okay, yeah, no problem. That 30 minutes can be broken down into like 3 parts, 10, 10, 10, and work your way up, at least start somewhere. So it's not all or nothing,
Right.
And you spoke about the resistance. And I love that you said, the bands, because we tend to think, those dumbbells, but you can do your own body. You can use your own body, as resistance, and you can do the bands that you referred to. So if you don't like dumbbells, okay, that's fine. There are other things that you can use. And you spoke about just really maintaining your overall muscle, the ratio. And the thing about it is that I didn't believe it when a friend of mine told me the moment I turned 40 that my joints.
You see how I just leaned into the camera?
I know. I did not believe it. I
It's
said
something
it's
else, isn't it?
impossible. And sure enough, the joints were calling. They were like cracking. I was like, what in the world? So it is real. It really is real. So we really need to prioritize this movement. Everything that you said is so correct. And you said something. You said, do it now so that later on you're not wishing that I should have prioritized that movement. And, over 30, we begin to lose muscle. That's just the fact. And muscle is what supports our body, right? It's our structural. So if we're losing the muscle and we're not strengthening it, then what's going to happen? And it brings me to what I remember is I used to see a lot of older patients running and they all looked fit. And I was wondering why are they doing this? I mean, they should go sit down. I now know why, because they want to maintain the muscle mass. So even though they looked fit, in my opinion, that's why they look the way they look, because they're doing it. Because I thought, why are you overdoing it? That's what I used to think. But that was me, after, of course, once you know better, you do better. So I don't condemn those people anymore. I want to be them. So you really highlighted on so many things. And I want to circle back again and ask you if there are things that people need to be aware of in terms of, okay, I've learned all these from Dr. Hopkins. I now know that I need to do 30 minutes, 5 days a week. I need to stretch. I need balance. But what things do I need to look out for? Do I need to eat? Do I need to have a full tummy? What do I need to drink? These kind of things can put people, because there's so much information on the internet, right? People get confused. And so knowing from you as an expert, can you just give us some, expert opinion about how should we start? How do we hydrate? How do we eat? Because personally, when I was trained, I just completed my first and only marathon, and I'm not doing it ever again. I tell you, yes, thank you so much, but I'm not going down that part anymore. I was so confused. I couldn't really understand how much to eat, how much not to eat, because there was a lot of conflicting information. So I really want to hear from you, just basic, how do we hydrate? How do you encourage your patients or just your community on how to start and fuel themselves to be able to sustain it so that they don't hurt themselves and not want to do it again?
Okay, absolutely. So I say one of the very first things that I would recommend, and I strongly recommend, even if you're new to exercise, especially if you're new to exercise, if you haven't exercised in a while, if you are maybe like, let's just say you were a former athlete and then, 15, 20 years after you've completed your 10 years after you've completed your athletic career, we want to get back to some regular physical activity. Your body's actually changed quite a bit, right? So I would first recommend get a fitness assessment. And so you can get a fitness assessment from, many medical care organizations. Very soon, you'll be able to get fitness assessments through Morehouse Healthcare. We're working on it. You can get a fitness assessment at any commercial gym with a personal trainer, a certified personal trainer. Make sure you're dealing with certified personal trainers. YMCAs, you can get fitness assessments. And the purpose of the fitness assessment is to understand what your fitness baseline is, right? And so there are a number of different things that are done in a fitness assessment. We assess your muscular strength, your muscular endurance, your core strength. We do a mobility assessment where we look at how you move in different planes. We ask you to perform certain movements to see how your body moves, to see if there are any biomechanical issues going on. If you have any unresolved, injuries or unresolved kind of problem areas, it's important for a professional to be able to assess what's going on and point you in the right direction. That may be something, let's just say if you're dealing with, I've had a bum knee for 10 years. Well, have you ever gotten that knee checked out to really figure out what's going on? Because some things you can work around and some things you need to directly address. So a fitness assessment definitely will help you kind of understand kind of what your levels are. Just like if you were to get a regular, get a well exam, just to make sure to know what your numbers are. So know what your numbers are by getting a fitness assessment. It's it is a worthwhile investment. It's going to be the best $50 to $75 you've ever spent. Trust me. And what that also does is it sets a baseline. So let's say you start an exercise program to determine whether or not you're truly progressing and getting better. You can do the assessment again in 12 weeks, 24 weeks to see how much you've changed. And oftentimes why that's important is that, especially when we start an exercise program, we tend to look at and refer to the scale every day. Oftentimes, that's not the best indicator of fitness. Right. So I would definitely say getting a fitness assessment. And then from there, the other important thing about a fitness assessment is it lets somebody who is a wellness professional kind of understand how you're operating, and they can create a tailored program, something that's going to be feasible, something that can be progressive in nature so you can build on it over time, right? So I definitely say start small, start with the assessment. And if the assessment is done right, it's going to feel like a workout, right? And then from there, tailor your approach. When it comes to hydration, I'm a big fan of making sure that you're hydrated before you start an exercise bout, throughout the exercise bout, and making sure that you're rehydrating afterwards, right? And a lot of it has to do with really feeling it out. How does it work for you? Not one person's hydration story isn't the same as another.
That's
so
right. That's true.
Getting hydrated is one thing, but understanding, what type of hydration and when it's gonna come to fruition once you start doing the activity. The same thing with diet. There are a lot of different people that kind of say, you want to do cardiovascular exercise fasted, right? Versus some people, myself included, if I wake up in the morning and decide, let's say I had my dinner at 6, 7 o'clock p.m. If I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning and say, I'm going to get on the bike for an hour long, or I'm going to, I don't run, but if I'm going to swim for, 1,600 meters, I'm not going to make it unless I have something on my stomach, right? So again, it really depends on what works for you, and why it's important to try different things out and see how your body's going to respond.
Oh yes, oh goodness, that was so it's so paramount that you say that we need to figure it out. So gather the information, but try it out, explore different things and see what feels right for you. So you definitely is so important. With the hydration, would that be water or electrolyte water? What would you say about that? Because I know that's a question that I myself was curious about. I find that if I work out, because I prefer to work out in the mornings, because if I don't do it in the mornings, it's unlikely that I'll do it in the evenings. But when I wake up, I've tried having a full tummy, and that just sit well with me if I'm not doing anything aggressive. So that's part of what you said, that test it out. I've tested it both ways, and I see that as long as I'm not doing anything like vigorous, because it is a vigorous part of exercise, whereas the 75 to 150 minutes, I can do it on an empty stomach. The part that I get, there's a lot of information out there, is that you should eat as soon as you finish working out, because you need to build those muscles back. So I guess the question that I'm asking is, does it matter fluid, or does it have to be like electrolytes? Some people feel they always have to have Gatorade. Can you speak to that, just in case we have anyone in the audience that wants to just get some baseline information about that?
Absolutely. I'll just start off by saying you can never go wrong with great, wonderful, unadulterated, filtered water, just as a way of, and really what hydration is replenishing giving yourself what you need and replenishing what you've lost. So having regular water handy is definitely a tremendous go-to, right? I would say in cases, let's say with endurance athletes, or let's just say you're in prolonged physical activity where you tend to be sweating profusely, that means that you're expelling some of your electrolytes. So having an electrolyte replacement might be a good idea, like a Pedialyte or a Gatorade or something like that. But I would say, in terms of being absolutely necessary, that will be for the case where you're really sweating profusely, when that shirt is soaked through, when you can taste that sweat on the brow, that's when you want to maybe think about an electrolyte. But if you're just doing something to get the heart rate going, just regular water is your best friend.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for emphasizing that, because that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
It's important that we pay attention to what we're doing and the reason behind what we're doing, because that will tailor, what, in terms of how much we're supposed to eat, or how much we're supposed to drink, or what we need to drink to replenish. So that's important. I see that there's a question in the chat box, so thank you all for bringing your question. So the first question is walking sufficient just walking, if you walk enough, do you still have to do weights? So that's one question. And I'll throw the second question. How many steps are recommended? I know there's a number of steps that will equivalent to sedentary. So anything less than 5,000, I know it's that you're just inactive. And then when we start getting to 10,000 and more, means that you're more active. So I'll let you, as the expert, share with us, if I'm walking enough, do I still need to lift weights? And then the other one is how many steps is okay? You know, if you're one of those that have a Fitbit. Do you have one, Dr. Hopkins? I'm curious. Do you use any of these at all?
Yes, I actually have. Well, I just transitioned. I was Team Fitbit for many years, but I've currently transitioned. I don't have it with me, but I have an Apple Watch, and that's what I use. That's the wearable that I use. So I think a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, Garmin is a great one as well. Polar. Those are all great devices. And I talk a little bit about that in terms of having an accountability partner. So we'll get to that.
Yes.
But yes, I do use wearables, and I think they work well for me. To address the question about walking, congratulations. I'm glad that you are walking, right? So again, start simple. So by getting out and doing some prolonged walking, I think that's a great start, right? So when we talk about the recommendations that we spoke about earlier, right? Those recommendations are to reap the full complement of some of these exercise related benefits of physical activity, such as the reduction in all-cause early mortality. So people that exercise are less likely to die early, 30% less likely to die early, meaning dying before the average lifespan for their gender and for their race, ethnicity, right? Yeah. So you can reap those benefits through walking. Now, the caveat being, are you leisurely strolling or are you brisk walking? Because there's a big difference between the two. So if you add a little bit of intensity to that walk, you're going to reap additional benefits. So that being said, walking is a great moderate to vigorous physical activity if you're doing it at a certain intensity level, right? So number one, and does that exempt you from muscle strengthening activities? No. Why I say that is because by doing muscle strengthening activities, you're working different parts of your fitness, right? And that's going to reap different types of benefits. So in order to reap all those wonderful benefits, when it comes to getting the endorphin rush, when it comes to the cardiovascular health, when it comes to the reduced inflammation that is a sign and a marker of many of the cancers and other inflammatory diseases, you want to get the aerobic activity at the moderate to vigorous level in addition to the muscle strengthening activities. And that's something that you can get through progressively. So it may be, I want to start off with doing 1 day of muscle strengthening activities, and then over time, work your way up to 2. So definitely thinking progressively about getting to those marks, but you definitely don't want, I would say, one is not better than the other. They both work synergistically. Yeah. And so the goal is to get both and challenge yourself to get both.
Yes. And the other question about the steps, how many steps are we required to have? Again, to your point, start wherever you are, advance as tolerated, but generally speaking, I know that anything less than 5,000 is considered that you just sat all day, you didn't get up, you just barely, even when there was an opportunity for advertisement, you didn't even get up, you just stayed down. So that is that amount. And then as you increase, it means that you're mildly active. And then there's the progressive. So 10,000 is what I see that people try to
10 to 15,000.
Yeah, 10 to 15. And I think that is approximately, is that 1 to 2 miles, about 10 to 10,000. There's actually an equivalent amount. So I can always circle back and put it in the chat box, the picture and what it shows in terms of how many miles do you actually cover if you get 10,000 steps a day. So these are great questions that are asked. A question here, what are the benefits of working up a sweat? Yeah, I know that could be controversial too, because I've seen where people say, well, so because I didn't sweat, does that mean I didn't work out? Everybody's different. I sweat. My kids make fun of me. They say you just, the walk that we've been going together for, the walk, it was like, what are you, you're not even like walking and you're sweating. I know, it's terrible. I'm even sweating right now. I sweat a lot. I don't know what it is. But the question is, do you have to work up a sweat? For some people, maybe they don't sweat. And does that mean they didn't work out? So please help us out, because I don't know. It really depends. So I'll leave it up to you as the expert.
Certainly. And what I'll try to do is once you pose that question, I kind of went into exercise physiology mode, and I'm going to try to keep it as non-nerdy as possible, because sweat is a physiological response to a stressor, when the stressor being exercise, right? So I would say sweat is a good thing. So not all activities are going to cause you to sweat profusely, right? And people's sweat tolerances are very different. I'm one of those kind of people that it doesn't take a whole lot of activity for me to start sweating, right?
Okay.
I was looking at my bag here to see if I actually carry a small
Towel or something?
towel, because again, I'm always, I'm always doing something active and I isn't sweating. So I
Okay.
would say that and sweat is an indicator of your body adapting to the effort that you're putting in. So that's an indicator that you're actually working pretty hard. You're really working your physiological systems. So I would say sweat is a good thing. Is it necessary, like I said, to be sweating profusely after every workout? Not necessary. It all depends on what you're doing, right? Let's say, for example, those different modes of exercise. So when it comes to aerobic exercise, because it's continuous in nature, and because you have to operate at a certain activity to kind of kick in that aerobic system, and because of what happens to our body when we are in that, when we're working that aerobic system, that's going to cause sweat to accumulate. Versus, let's just say we're doing Tai Chi, or let's just say we're doing something that's more flowing, or, some, like some flow yoga or something like that. That's not, or, it's not power yoga. So you're not moving through movements very quickly, but let's just say you're sustaining movements, right? You may not sweat as much, but you're still working, right? So it all really depends on the different activity that you're doing, right? And I think you're pretty hard pressed to be doing something continuously for at least 10 minutes and not to break a sweat, So again, that also lends the question of, in terms of your duration, the bouts of your activity, right? Sometimes it's good to have that extended bout that kind of get you to that sweat threshold, where you need to pull out that towel and wipe the brow, but not all activity is going to be required for that to sweat profusely.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. Very good. All right. Yes, definitely. We understood that the sweating is definitely during the exercise. So someone had asked a question there. So, it's great that we're talking about this. And now that we're going into the winter months, oh my goodness. I've also used that as an excuse. I love to do my exercise outdoor because I get bored very quickly. I need to see things, and I have nothing against gym, and I do. I'm a member of the Y, so I do go there and do other activities. But when it comes to walking, I don't know how to stay on a treadmill and walk continuously. But the concern that we tend to have is during winter, it's too cold, or during summer, people say it's too hot. So there's always these barriers that we put on ourselves. But you've already said it and alluded to it. The benefits of exercise is so enormous that we really need to look at it, that we're helping our mental, our physical, it's helping us to think straight, to stay focused. And it's, even when when there are those obstacles and barriers, we need to push above that so that we can get the benefits that we're looking. So you mentioned that you're going to speak about some things that would keep us consistent, because it's not all the time we feel like doing it, but how do we stay motivated? I believe the key thing is consistency, even if it's whatever weather it is. So what I tell myself, I encourage myself, my family members, there's YouTube. You can do something in your house. You don't have to go outside and embrace the cold. Or if you're hot, even if it's just around the house, can you speak to some of the things that you have encouraged your community to participate in that will make it fun? I guess, groups, whatever it might be. Can you share some of those things that definitely help us to show up constantly for ourselves? We put ourselves first, because I think that's really what we're doing when we're dedicating time to exercise and move our bodies.
Certainly. So kind of, when I talk about kind of what are those keys to success and how do I get to my 30 minutes a day? The first thing I say is explore, explore, explore. Find what works for you. And I really mean explore, right? Try out different things, especially, I think seasonal changes. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we tend to be, just as a general principle, we tend to be less active once it gets colder outside. And the way I kind of think about it is that that is a reality. But for people like me, seasonal affective, seasonal affective disorder is a disorder as well, right? That's a reality as well. So I have to do things personally to combat that seasonal affective disorder, being inside and feeling cooped up, right? And so by exploring different things, and I really want to say I appreciate I mean, that's going to sound kind of weird, but the experience that we had during the COVID-19 pandemic, it really pushed us to get creative about physical activity, because many of us that like going to different public spaces and places, they were not accessible at first, right? And so having to identify places and spaces, in the home setting, a lot of people got exercise equipment that now is probably collecting dust, but you have it, you've made that investment. There are amazing things that you can do. A little workout that I made during the pandemic, I had a resistance band, I had a jump rope, and I had a kettlebell, and I had a mat. And so what I would do, a mat. So like a yoga mat, right? And so I called it my 15 minutes of fun. And so I would create a 15-minute workout where I made these different stations, and it was great. It was great. And I felt so refreshed afterwards. So I was able to use what I had, right? So different movements. It didn't get boring. I actually started inviting other, I had like little parties where we would like do 15 minutes of fun. We also even did like
you did that on Zoom.
Get it on Zoom. I taught people the workout. I can actually share it with you if you'd like. But like just doing things like that. So just really thinking outside of the box. There are different things that we take for granted. I'll say, for example, most afternoons I take a walk after I have lunch. So I try my best to sit down and eat something, and then I'll walk for maybe 5-10 minutes. And so for me, I'm getting my minutes, I'm getting my steps in. So I would say definitely explore and be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. Swimming, that's another activity that I absolutely adored, and that's an indoor activity. So it's one of those things where you're going to face the elements when you go outside to drive to the pool or to bike to the pool, however you're going to get there. But once you're inside, you don't have to worry about the elements. So again, it's the matter of, yes, the elements can be a deterrent, but really think about what the benefit is and how important that benefit is, getting it in. And then also, I don't want people to think so much about, okay, long-term, this is going to be good for you, but you feel good once you've done it.
That's right.
One of the things I used to always tell when I did more personal training with individuals, I would always tell my clients, your job is to make it here. Just get here. By hook or by crook, just get here and I'll take it from there. I'll make sure you feel better walking out of the gym than you walked in, but your job is just to get here.
To show up. That's right. That's I mean, showing up is already half the battle, right? So showing up is half the battle. Yes, this is awesome. This is great. I'm learning a lot as well. And I hope that you, our viewers, are learning a lot as well. We want you to begin to make that commitment to be active as we begin to wrap up. We're getting into the last quarter of the year, and this is the time when everybody is busy, hustling and bustling. We have Thanksgiving and all of that, but in the midst of it, let's all still try and move. Let's no longer make those excuses. We've already heard from Dr. Hopkins things that we can do. Make your own workout routine, do something, just stay active, keep moving. I created something myself too, where depending on your name, and I'm going to circle back and share it, where it was A to Z, like for instance, if I was spelling Babs, so B had a specific workout, A had a specific workout. So if my name was B, then I'll do jumping jacks, 5 jumping jacks, and then A, I would do sit-ups, and all of them are modifiable. So if you're there and you're listening and you say, oh, well, but my knees hurt, my joints hurt, all of that, it's pushing through them that you begin to get the relief. But if you stay still and sit and not move, then it gets even more stiff. So I like to always wrap up with, co-host, just sharing anything that you might want to wrap up, just to tell the listeners. And then there are 3 questions, commonly asked questions, that I will wrap up with, and we'll call it a day. So if you don't mind, Dr. Hopkins, if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you? And if you have any closing remarks about just your takeaway message and what you want the listeners to leave with.
Okay, excellent. I would say my number one departing message is that physical activity it's a gift that we give to ourselves, right? It really is a gift that we give to ourselves. Yeah. It's something in terms of all the different things in life that we can't control, that are outside of our locus of control. How we move and how active we are, that is something that we can control. And so part of my message is, let's take advantage of that control and let's take control of that, right? You want to have physical activity work in your favor, right? And so that's one thing, is that there is, when I hear people say, oh, I don't have time, it's just kind of like, well, you actually have the ability to make time and to create space. And it's important, not just with physical activity, but other aspects of lifestyle behavior, to make time and make accommodations for them, because you're investing in self. You are absolutely investing in self. And that's one of the best things that you can do for yourself and for your family and for your community. Because what's going to happen? What happens if you break down? And let's just say you're a caregiver. Let's just say you're somebody that just kind of has that caregiving mentality. If you are out, if you're out of commission, who's going to take care of you? So it's important, especially if you have that type of mentality or you have that role in life, to take care of yourself, right? And understand that exercise comes into so many different forms. Again, find what works for you, find your tribe, so a group of people or a space and a place that breathes life into you, that you enjoy being around, that are going to keep you motivated and keep you on task. Lean into your accountability partners. It can be a device such as a Fitbit. It can be a person. I actually have a couple of accountability partners. These partners are kind of invested in whatever your fitness goals are, your activity goals, and they give you encouragement, and they also give you a little nudge if you fall off track, right? Get assessed, get those assessments, definitely. I just can't stress enough that I want to see more people on the other side of that line when it comes to adhering to these physical activity recommendations, because the science already suggests that these people are better off, right? I want people to live into their 80s and 90s, but I want them to be robust in their 80s and 90s. If you're dealing with a chronic disease, incorporating physical activity to help give yourself the best shot of dealing with that chronic disease. It's not a death sentence. It's not, you're not condemned to bad health, right? There are ways that we can be proactive with our health, right? I could go on, but I'll definitely just say that it's worth making the priority. And if you need help and you need support, there are helps and there are supports that are out there. But with physical activity, oftentimes the person has to take the first step.
Yes. So many valuable nuggets. Thank you so very much for just spending your time with us. I know you're a very busy person, and you've just dedicated time to speak to your community. This platform is all about empowering our community. So thank you so very much for that. We always hear that if we do not create time for wellness, we'll be forced to create time for the illness. And I know that after today, we are going to go away with something. Yes. So they want your information. How can they get in touch with you? So if you can share that quickly, and I'll definitely talk about just 2 commonly asked questions before we wrap up.
Certainly. I would say the best way to get in contact with me would be, I'm on social media. So my Instagram handle is Dr. J Hopkins, Hopkins. So Dr. Hopkins. That's my Instagram handle. So definitely come find me on Instagram. And my email address here at Morehouse School of Medicine is jhopkins@msm.edu. So either of those 2 ways you can get in direct contact with me.
Awesome. All right. So let's see, how many minutes do we have? So commonly asked questions. All right. I used to be guilty of one of these questions. So can I eat all I want, like the burgers and the French fries, and go work out for 2 hours and I'll still be fine? So yeah, no, that it doesn't work that way at all. And I see Dr. Hopkins like, no, you cannot outrun a bad diet. So foundation is nutrition. We're not punishing ourselves with exercise. I used to do that before. And again, I say I love exercise, and I used to think, as much as I love it, I could also take it to my advantage and burn out all those donuts, because I'm a sweet tooth, but I'm learning to prioritize God made sweet than engineered made sweet and sugar. So I don't do that anymore. And please, I do want to encourage you, prioritize your nutrition. All right, your exercising not to burn calories, because it takes a whole lot to even begin to burn those calories. You don't even want to hear how many hours of exercise you would have to burn just one burger or pizza, slice of pizza. So prioritize your exercise because you want to be mentally fit, physically fit, not because you're trying to burn calories. Okay. Right. And then the second one is, I think I already said, I spoke about the arthritis. Some people have joint issues. I had to make a change in my life before I turned 40 because of the poor nutrition I had to change that and get rid of inflammation. You heard Dr. Hopkins talk about inflammation. When we eat poorly, it forms inflammation. The body doesn't recognize it as food. So when I was able to change that, then the joint issues began to resolve. And then I was able to do more physical activity. And I know now, because I have a family history of arthritis, to move more because that helps. My mom joined us on the walk with the doc. And just so that in case I can use this opportunity to talk about the walk with the doc that we have at Morehouse, please come out and join us. It's the first Saturday of every month, 9 to 10. We'll circle back and put the flyer. Come join us, walk with us. Dr. Hopkins and I and the Morehouse communities and our patients just come and learn about a health-related topic. So back to what I was saying about my mom. So my mom has arthritis and she's 72, 73. She moved at her pace. She wasn't fast, but at the end of the day, she felt so good. So, you know, whatever the limitations are, you can modify it to fit your own self. And then the last question that I've usually hear people say, but I knew of somebody who was so fit, always running, and then he had a heart attack and died. How is that possible? Well, we all don't know each other's story. We don't know what might have been going on with that person. Dr. Hopkins said it right. Get a fitness assessment if you're afraid that, you know, you might get on a treadmill and that is already a workout enough. So again, let's not, I mean, we do hear other people's story, but we don't know the intricacies of what happened to them and what else was going on. But let's not use that one example and cross out anything else that we potentially can do that will benefit us. So those are the 3 commonly asked questions. And I definitely want to thank you all so very much for tuning in and just staying to the very end. It's been a wrap. Our kickoff has been fantastic, and I hope that you found it valuable. I've learned a lot, and the whole idea is now that you've been informed, you're aware, I hope you're inspired. We want you to implement these steps so that you can become a healthy champion. I always like to leave with a nugget, and this particular one is actually a quote by George Berkeley that says, your body can stand almost anything. It's your mind that you have to convince. That's right. It's your mind. And this actually helped me when I did that 26.2 miles. Oh my goodness. It was my mind. I had to break that 26. I felt, I mean, I tried to get out of my comfort zone. So I knew it was something that, it was going to be very challenging, but the way I had to work my mind to it was break it into chunks of 5. And yeah, I was able to finish 6 hours. So you can walk, you can get up, you know, every commercial break, do squats, just do something. So thank you again, Dr. Hopkins, for being with us today. We thank the network, WCEG Network, for giving us this opportunity to empower our community. So we look forward to seeing you back at the next session, and that's going to be October the 3rd, Tuesday. Wish you all and your loved ones wonderful week. So take care and God bless.